This is the place, all right. Once we cross, it could all be different.
Let's go.
Hey everybody, this is Cameron, and welcome to another discussion of Twin Peaks 2017. Today we are discussing part 5, called Case Files. How's it going, Cameron?
Good, happy to be here.
All right, so first things up, when those opening credits kick in, I remember thinking this time, God, it's so comforting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shows out there where Netflix will pop up do you want to skip this intro? Twin Peaks is one of those where
Never.
I will never skip the intro. It's just
never ever skip it.
It's perfect. It lulls you in. It brings you into this other world. It kind of takes you away from all your worries and plants you into this town where you can worry about these people.
Yeah, I know. There needs to be like a scientific study where we take the Twin Peaks theme and play it for us during stressful situations and see how we respond, because I feel like it could help me.
All right, so this episode begins with a character named Lorraine talking to the two guys in the car that were attempting to assassinate who they thought was Dougie, but it's really R. Cooper. And she is stressed out because they haven't made the hit yet, even though they say that Dougie's car is still there. And she panics and types in a little message into her BlackBerry phone. That message then gets sent to where we later find out is Buenos Aires, Argentina.
So, yeah, you say she's stressed out. She's obviously stressed out. I say she's coked out as well. She just seems like she's on another level of jittering stress. And the two guys who I like to call the Goonies, if you guys recall, in part 3, they planted a little bomb underneath Dougie's car. So they're driving by every day to check on if he's opened his car door and started it yet. And he hasn't. His car's still there. That freaking stresses her out. And I love when the Goonies are like, she's a warrior, when they hang up. And they're like, yeah, she's a warrior. And you're left to wonder who the heck she's calling. It's very mysterious. You see, whenever she calls and then she sends the text message instead, we see what looks like we're in a basement. We don't know where this basement is. And there's a wooden bowl with some random 80s looking beeper in it that flashes with red lights when her code sends through. So you're like, ooh, that's the beginning mystery to this episode is, who is she contacting? Where is this little device located? We don't know yet.
Because we find out she is calling Buenos Aires, this recalls the scene in The Missing Pieces where Philip Jeffries is in Buenos Aires. Is she calling Philip Jeffries?
Or like you said, that person who was pretending or sounded like him on the phone.
David Lynch adopts this theme song for her because as we go through the series, every time we see Lorraine, it's the same music playing underneath every single one of her scenes.
I wrote down that it sounds like knockoff YouTube hip hop beats. Oh, and did you notice when she sends the message, she texts the message to, the contact name is Argent.
Right.
Argent, like Argentina.
I didn't actually think about that. I just assumed she misspelled the word urgent. This is why in its original run, I was thinking that Cooper, I thought maybe he had originally ended up in 2007 instead of 2015 because there's the housing crisis. Everyone's got Blackberries, the casino is giving quarters. It turns out that's not the case.
Yeah, we see somebody on an iPad later on. But I don't know. I imagine it's just a burner phone. Something maybe she bought at Walmart to dispose of later.
All right, so the next scene finds Constance, the coroner, and she is examining the body of Major Briggs and talking to two of the police officers that we met earlier in the season from Buckhorn, South Dakota.
It starts off with a gruesome close-up on that gore. Front and center, you're staring at what looks like his flesh being torn open. It's pretty gross. But I love how she says, it took me a while, but I think someone cut this man's head off. It got a laugh out of me, but the detectives received this like it was news to them. They're like, oh, somebody cut his head off. And she says, I'm a stand-up comedian on the weekends. So I know what I would be doing on the weekends if I lived in Buckhorn. I'd be going to see her. She's funny.
See, I took that as she was making sort of a comedic remark about her time. I don't think she's actually a stand-up comedian. Now,
but
that being said,
she has a bunch of zingers in her pocket, though. She's firing them off.
But this plants the seed as to why her and Albert get along. Sarcasm chemistry.
Yeah. And she finds, she presents this ring that she found inside the body of this John Doe. And it says, to Dougie with love, Janie E.
The question is, how did the Tulpa Dougie's wedding ring end up with Major Briggs? It would have been really interesting if she had found like the Owl Cave ring inside his.
Yeah. But it also reminds me a little bit of the letters that Bob puts underneath the fingernails of his victims.
The Tulpa Dougie had to be wearing the Owl Cave ring so that he got sent to the lodge. So we move past that to the Doppelganger, stuck in his prison cell, awaiting crappy food.
Food is coming.
Yeah.
He's got like a little bit of premonition powers, it seems like.
Now, I remember at the time, people were extremely argumentative saying that the Doppelganger is, not the same as Bob and all that. And it's true. He's not. He's Cooper's Doppelganger. That being said, at the end of season 2, Bob takes Wyndham's soul and is laughing with Cooper's Doppelganger. When the Doppelganger looks at himself in the mirror at the end of season 2, he sees Bob's reflection, indicating that Bob is in the Doppelganger.
Yes.
And people were saying to me, like, that's not, that may have been true back then, but why would Bob stay with him for 25 years? Well, this scene confirms that Bob is still inside the Doppelganger. So I feel vindicated.
Yeah, and we get to see, he goes to wash his hands before he eats his meal, which is quite gentlemanly of him, I guess. But as he's washing his hands, he looks in the mirror, and then we get that flashback to that iconic scene at the end of season 2 with him smashing his head in the mirror with Bob. And then we also see the Fire Walk With Me footage. I think it's missing pieces, right? Them laughing together. That's a missing piece.
Well, no, them laughing together is from season 2. However, it's longer than what we see in season 2. So it's they kind of went back and found some outtakes to use.
Okay. I was wondering. I was like, was this a missing piece? But yeah, it shows that flashback, and then he says, oh, good, you're still with me.
Remember when Leland was arrested, Bob took that as his opportunity. I'm out of here. And he rammed Leland into a wall until he died. I mean, I always took it as that Bob was just suppressed inside Leland the entire time, and then would rise his little filthy head at
with
moments.
Leland's case, it seemed like sort of a split personality sort of thing, since he didn't have any memory of what he was doing. But I don't know if that's always the case.
At the end of Fire Walk With Me, it's suggested by Leland's dialogue to Laura in the train car that he is a little bit more aware than he has led on by saying, I always thought you knew it was me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a bit of a gray area there that they just kind of leave up for interpretation. But
I thought the effect of having Frank Silva's image in the mirror in the prison was very tastefully done. Yeah. And it's so subtle.
Yeah, it's a very, very slight distortion where he's almost looking at a funhouse mirror, and he looks like himself, but he doesn't. So unless you're really paying attention, you wouldn't pick up that it's Frank Silva's face mixed in with his.
But it's really creepy.
It is so creepy.
There's so many actors that are in this season that later passed away. And there's a lot of characters where the actors unfortunately passed away before they filmed this. But much like Major Briggs, they found really great ways to still bring them into the season.
Yeah.
All right, so we go from that moment to Mike Nelson, Bobby's old high school friend, giving a job interview to Steven, who is Becky's husband, and Becky is Shelley's daughter. And this is the only scene in this season that Mike has. And it's kind of just bizarrely funny that this guy who was such a troublemaker in high school, a drug dealer, a guy that hooked up with Nadine Hurley for half of season 2, is giving this young 20-year-old this like advice of like, you're an idiot and you're never going to get a job.
To me, Mike is still the man, right? Like, I hate Steven's character. He's just so annoying to me. So I find great satisfaction in hearing him get told off. And it's almost like he's doing him a favor. He's not saying it very kindly, but Steven needs to hear it. Like, he doesn't know how to fill out a resume. His application for the job was incomplete. He probably spelled things wrong. He's like, dude, what are you doing? Not that he's like a standout guy who would actually take that feedback to heart. But to me, I read it more as like Mike coming from a older, almost like he's talking to himself, like talking to his old self. If I were you, I would get my shit together. Because clearly he did. He had a turn at some point we never saw between this 25-year gap.
When you watch the end of part 2, when Shelley and her friends are in the Roadhouse, and she's talking about how worried she is about her daughter Becky, yes. And Renee, this character that we'll meet more later in this season, says, what are you talking about? Everybody loves Steven. And this season like says that right up front. Everybody loves Steven, and yet it shows nobody likes Steven. So yeah. I'm very confused by this. And a friend of mine said the way that he rationalizes it is maybe Steven was fine, but the sparkle drug really works fast.
I like that theory. I mean, there's a couple of ways. Like, I think we said whenever we were talking about that episode, like maybe the actor just was supposed to be sarcastic and it fell flat. Or another thing that I think about is maybe everybody likes him when they're at a party. Like, she seems kind of like a party girl. And, you know, Steven, I'm sure, will give bumps to any pretty lady at a party. He's definitely like the definition of a rat boy.
Him and Becky probably were like the great high school senior couple that now that they're in their early 20s and they're staying in Twin Peaks, there's not a lot of jobs there. And so they're kind of falling apart and using that self-loathing they have for each other to consume drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it's like, maybe there are jobs, but he just seems so lousy that he just can't keep one. Or, and I don't mean to be say lousy or whatever, because obviously that he has like a greater addiction that's kind of the cause of this. Maybe he could be a better guy if he got clean, but we don't know that.
And nor do we ever find out.
No.
And I don't know who is worse in this part. Is it Steven or is it later Mr. Richard Horn?
We'll get to it. We'll get to it, buddy. But I thought it was interesting upon a rewatch. Oh, I guess we're not there yet.
Go ahead.
But since he brought it up, on a rewatch, they don't tell you who that man is. They don't tell you it's Richard Horn yet. He's just some stranger this whole episode.
You do find out in the credits.
Oh, in the credits. Oh, okay.
And that's when everybody freaked out.
I never watched the credits.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, I remember when this part aired, I was like, who is that guy? And people all my life were saying, that's Richard Horn. That's Audrey's son. And I was like, what? Like, so the end credits are giving clues before we find them out.
Yeah. Kind of funny they wouldn't just like keep it more mysterious, like guy smoking in bar.
Well, they did do that with the Giant, because at the end of part 1, it says Carol Struycken plays 7 question marks.
Yes.
And then that's later as the fireman.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you think it's a purposeful thing. They're like, we want you to put 2 and 2 together if you're sticking around for the credits.
Yeah, it was kind of showing that you have to watch every frame of this.
Mm-hmm.
We next go to the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, and Frank Truman is on the phone with his brother Harry, and we don't find that out till the end of their conversation.
Well, you can kind of surmise because he's like, oh, yeah, you got the test results? Yeah. And we know he's being hospitalized. But this is sort of like what you were saying about Major Briggs and Bob's actor. I love how, although Harry isn't in this season, his character is still very much a part of it, and he's existing and interacting with other characters that we do see.
It would have been so easy for Lynch and Frost to be like, okay, Michael Onkeen is not coming back, so we'll just have Frank Truman be there, and we'll just say that his brother passed away, instead of creating this whole thing where we have to acknowledge Harry so many times in this season. And yet they completely go that second route to leave the door open for Michael Onkeen to return if they ever came back to this material later. And I thought that's just a really classy touch. They could have easily killed his character off.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what? We can't do that to Harry Truman.
Or more egregiously, recast, like they did with Donna.
People assumed that Robert Forster was going to be playing Harry because Robert Forster had originally been cast as Harry in the original series before he had to drop out and Michael Onkeen got the job. So people thought, oh, if Michael Onkeen's not available, Robert Forster will be playing the part. And then it was like, surprise, no, I'm going to be playing his brother. And not only that, but Harry is still very much alive. And even though we never see him, there's a lot of time in this season dedicated to Frank on the phone with Harry.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, he's told his wife is coming in, right?
Right.
Doris is her name.
And she's played by Candy Clark, who was in American Graffiti. She also was the original Buffy Summers' mom in the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
So she comes in and is just a force of nature. She's got a lot on her mind. And Frank is just kind of sitting there and taking it all in. In another part, we're going to find out why she's like this. Just taking the scene unto itself. I remember a lot of critics at the time were saying, like, why does Lynch have to make his wife this nagging woman, you know,
Yes.
right? So what do you think about this scene?
Yeah. Examining it just as this scene without like ever anything else we learn about her, it definitely does seem like that nagging wife stereotype. And it's not a very funny joke. Even if that isn't what he's doing, I don't think it's very funny. It's cutesy, whatever. Dwight has diarrhea. The twins are coming. He got in the cupboard again. There's a leaky pipe. She has all these things on her plate, and she's for some reason so helpless to take care of them herself. She's completely dependent on Frank to do everything. She's like, have you called? Have you talked to this person? And he's just like, yep, took care of that. They said this. His relationship with her honestly reminds me a lot of Nadine and Ed.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. She's very kind of like crazy and erratic, and he's just so chill and level-headed and isn't surprised by anything, really, she says. And she says, "You're impossible," and storms out and slams the door. But yeah, I can see where those critiques are coming from.
So in another part, we find out that their son died during the Gulf War. This is weighing on her so much, right, that she just is erratic. And he internalized it so much that he's not even acknowledging it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that we find out this information from other characters.
Yeah.
So Frank and Doris never talk about it at all in this season. And it makes me think, because the actors in the season only got the scenes that they were in, except for Kyle. He got the whole thing. So did Robert Forster and Candy Clark as actors know they had a son that passed away? Or was that something they found out when they watched the series? Because Sherilyn Fenn, when she first watched this, she said, I didn't know I had a son.
That could very well be a possibility. Also, her line, Dwight has diarrhea. He got in the cupboard again. Like, you're like, is this a little toddler, a little 6-year-old they have or something? Or is it a dog?
I'm going to assume it's a dog.
Yeah, now that we know all that stuff that happens later on, we can know it's a dog. But at the time when you're watching this episode, you don't know who Dwight is. You don't know about her history with her son.
But my question is, if the actors didn't know that they had a son that died, then that is my own bias perceiving sadness in their performance if they weren't playing that. Because if they didn't know they had a son, they can't play that sadness. But me hearing this information from another character in another part, I'm now projecting that into their performance. Wish I
That's
could.
a cool way to think about it. Am I perceiving sadness that isn't actually there because I know the story?
Right.
I'm going to be thinking about that. I mean, Frank kind of has sad eyes. I don't know. They just kind of like droop down.
Yeah, he reminds me of like a bloodhound.
Yeah.
All right, so then we go from that to Janie E getting the family ready to start the day.
She counted that money.
So she's getting Cooper as Dougie ready in the morning. And here is a moment where Kyle starts to cry. Because, you have Sonny Jim sitting in the back of the car. And it's almost like Cooper for a moment. Again, it's projecting what I think is happening. Is Cooper realizing or remembering or taking note of the life he didn't have.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. I like that, and I've thought of that. But this time around, it almost made me feel like he was coming from a place of like tears of joy instead of tears of sorrow on his missed time and not actually having kids of his own. I feel like he's just taking in the morning rush a family has, getting ready for work and getting ready for school. And he's looking at it as an outsider. And he's like, wow, look at this beautiful family. Look at my wife. Look at my son. I've always wanted a kid. And he's just tearing up.
But Lynch shoots this shot of Sonny Jim in the back of the car, and it's kind of an unremarkable shot. I'm going to think that they shot a few minutes so that they could have some choices in the editing room. But the shot that they choose to use, if you look carefully at the frame, it moves in and then it shoots back out. And it's not something that they did in post. It's almost like the cameraman was like adjusting. And for whatever reason, they chose that moment as the cutaway shot to Sonny Jim. And that, even in a subtle way, is suggesting there's erraticism happening here in this storyline.
I don't think I've noticed that particular effect, but I did notice he's like Sonny Jim's staring off into space. It's almost like a little bit creepy. Sonny Jim's a really cute character, but it's like he has a little bit of that like original Dougie creepiness to him. And also it just made me think like, how the hell did a tulpa even have a baby?
Have you noticed that Sonny Jim still has not said one single word?
Yep.
And what Lynch and Frost give him to say coming up, I think in the next part, is very purposeful.
Hey, this is the Jones house, this is their normal, I guess, is their son's weirdly quiet. Janie E does all the talking, and Dougie also seems like the quiet type.
Now she says to him, "You're acting weird as shit," and it makes me think, well, how did the other Dougie act?
Yeah, that's a really interesting line, because that kind of answer to me, like I've been remarking this whole time about how everybody just takes Dougie's change in behavior at face value. They just go along with it and not like, oh my God, are you okay? Did you have a stroke? The only person that said that was Jade. But whenever Janie E says, I think you're having one of your episodes, you're kind of left to surmise, oh, he does this. Like maybe it was a side effect of being a tulpa where he just freezes, kind of like his arm going numb.
Because he's wearing the Alcave ring.
I don't know cars at all. I don't know what kind of car Janie E drives, but it's cute. Do you know what kind of car that is?
I don't.
I don't either. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of classy, but modern. me when I try to describe a car.
So the next thing is the assassins that we saw earlier in this part
Yep.
drive by the house in Rancho Rosa. They see that Dougie's car is still there. Then the camera moves over and we see these car thieves pull up.
Well, you don't know what exactly they're doing, but it does seem like they're casing the property.
Right. Well, obviously we don't know that they're car thieves at this moment,
Yeah.
but we find out later in this part.
Yeah. I mean, they're just like rowdy teenagers.
Looking for anything that they could rob.
It's just adding to that like ghost town feel because when it moves over, you just see rows and rows and rows of houses that look exactly the same, and they all have these different for sale signs from these different realtor agencies trying to list the house.
All right, so Janie E drops Dougie off at work and just kind of shoves him out. How does he know where to go? And again, this goes to my theory of Cooper is in this loop. So it's almost like it's just instinct drawing him to go because he could have ended up in any of those buildings, but he kind of knows more or less the direction. And you'll also notice that all the red balloons when he is walking the promenade.
There is a lot of red in this episode, a lot of red. And I kind of noticed Dougie, he's wandering around. All these busy people are passing by, going to work. And he notices that statue. And he's like, oh, in his head, you can kind of see him go like, oh, I like that. And he walks up, and I don't know who it's a statue of, but it's like a gunslinger pointing out his gun. And Dougie goes up, and he mimics that pose and is just staring at it in wonder for a while. Yeah,
to me, the statue is sort of like Cooper recognizing the lawmen of the past, and he is sort of the modern FBI agent. I don't know if this is true, but I remember hearing that the statue's face is based off Lynch's own father. If that's true, that's a really interesting thing because Dale Cooper is a avatar for David Lynch, and to have him mimicking a statue that has his father's face, you could write a whole book about that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That would make sense too, because it looks like a stranger to me. I was like, I don't know who that statue is supposed to be of. If it's somebody in history, I've never seen him before. But I really love all these moments we get where Cooper as Dougie, he's kind of like rediscovering himself. He's rediscovering things that he loves, right? He tastes the coffee and he's like, this is the best thing in the world. Hello. He loves it. And then now he sees this guy holding a gun and he's like mimicking that pose. Like, I want to hold a gun. Like, that's an interest of mine.
It almost feels like David Lynch and Mark Frost are suggesting that Cooper needs to go back to sort of a childlike state and relearn to become an even better version of himself.
And he gets ushered into his work building by one of his coworkers, Phil. And I love what he says to him. He's like, what are you doing? Get the lead out, pal, and come on. And I've never heard that phrase before, but it's a great way to describe Dougie's glazy-eyed stare. It's definitely that lead stare.
But also, Phil starts off by saying, back from dreamland, Dougie.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, when David Lynch was making things like Blue Velvet and the original series of Twin Peaks, there was a real distinction between the world and the dreams. Like Jeffrey would go to bed and have these nightmares of Frank Booth and then wake up. Cooper would go to bed and have a dream about being in the Red Room with Laura and then wake up and tell Sheriff Truman, I know who killed Laura Palmer.
Yeah.
But then as Lynch evolved, it almost seemed like the waking and the dreams became one and the same, right? If you look at things like Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, it's only because Lynch has shown us that he wants to make the day-to-day mundane life just as surreal as a dream. As opposed to just saying, this is reality, this is dreams. Now we've kind of entered this other realm where it's sort of like Isabella Rossellini said, the whole moment in Blue Velvet when Jeffrey gets taken to Ben's house by Frank and his goons, that whole kind of surrealistic moment of Stockwell singing Roy Orbison, in dreams and all that. It's like Lynch has been working his entire career to make an entire film with that sort of feeling, where it's like it's real, but it's unreal, but the whole thing feels like a daydream.
I love that. I think he's so good at, like you mentioned, Mulholland Drive. That whole thing feels like, a dream. But what you said specifically about how he's making the mundane aspects of life feel dreamlike, that's what I get the most out of Twin Peaks season 3 with the Dougie scenes. Because, like I said, Cooper as Dougie, he's an outsider. He's just like got plopped down from another planet. He doesn't know who he is or what he is. And so he's seeing people go to work. He goes in the elevator and he faces the wrong direction. And he just doesn't know all these unspoken social rules or any rules at all. And it does make things that are normal to us look bizarre through his eyes.
But him doing things in his own unique, individualistic way, whether he's aware of it or not, it has an effect on everyone around them to be their better self as well.
Yeah.
Like you say, he's in the elevator. He wants the coffee. Feels like, I didn't get you a coffee, but here, you can have this one. I guess Frank can have the green tea.
He never drinks his coffee anyway, he says.
Right. Lynch loves using similar names.
Yeah.
But because it's Kyle MacLachlan, grabbing Frank's coffee, I kind of thought that was kind of humorous.
Yeah, and I love whenever there's like this little moment where it's a takeout coffee cup with a lid, and he goes to sip it, and he's like rotating it around in his mouth until he can find the hole to get the coffee in. It's so good. And he says, "Damn good show," which little does he know, that's very close to Cooper's catchphrase.
When I first saw this season, I thought, oh, this is really cute. This is really funny. Now, when's Cooper coming back? I mean, I was entertained,
right?
But I was always on edge, like, what is going on? But now that you've seen this a few times and you can kind of relax and you know when it's coming, you can now just enjoy these scenes for what they are.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, when you just kind of give in and just kind of allow these scenes to just exist, they're amazing because the timing is impeccable. It's, like I said, like in the past, Lynch would try these funny scenes and sometimes they'd work and sometimes they wouldn't work. But his comedic timing and direction through a good chunk of this series is the best that David Lynch has ever directed comedic scenes.
Yes.
They're really funny. And they're also very subtle because a lot of the stuff went over people's heads.
Especially in this episode, there's so much humor. And David has honed in on his particular sense of humor is the way I feel. And I'm not trying to say that to discredit Mark Frost or whatever, but having been, and you too, David Lynch's sense of humor because we've seen everything he's ever made. It's that very specific kind of humor that he has. There's so much of it, and I agree, you're not worried about Agent Cooper coming back, and you're not worried about looking in the background for all these little clues on a rewatch. You can just, He goes into the office meeting, and you see Lucky 7 is the name of the insurance company that Dougie works for, which I thought was interesting. But anyways, they sit down, and the Frank guy whose coffee he's drinking, he sees Dougie drinking the coffee with his name on it, and he gets jealous. Kind of like a kid does whenever a kid sees another kid playing with their toy they didn't like. Suddenly they want that toy now. Oh, and there's another little seed we get in this scene before we move on, where we got some office affair politics. In the meeting, this guy named Darren who's married, he's sitting next to this other worker named Rhonda, and he's like, "Did you get my note?" Wink, wink. And she's like, no. She doesn't want anything to do with him. Maybe she did in the past, but she's over it now.
But she makes sort of this moral judgment by saying, why don't you tell it to your wife? And then later on in this part, It's very clear she has no problem with flirting with Dougie, who she knows is married.
Oh, yeah. I think she doesn't care as long as she's interested.
But maybe because Dougie doesn't have his wedding ring on, that's another reason why she kind of...
I didn't even think of that. He's not wearing his band. And Janie E didn't even notice.
This is also where we meet a character that I didn't think I was going to become so affectionate towards, Bushnell Mullins, the head of Lucky 7 Insurance.
I love him as well.
And then we also get to meet Tom Sizemore as Tony, who's just like, you think I'm a liar, Dougie?
Yeah, Don Murray plays the character of Mullins very straight, where he always has this like scrunched up serious face because he's the boss man.
But he's a character that at first you just assume is going to be the strict boss of Dougie Jones. And then he becomes such an affectionate character as the series goes on. And I think the same about the Mitchum brothers, who we later meet in this part.
Yeah.
You know, they're introduced one way, and so you're thinking this is who they're going to be. And by the end of the series, they're completely the opposite side of our, you know, the spectrum of how we feel emotionally towards them.
Yeah, the show does a lot of playing with these like character archetypes. The serious boss who you think is very serious and all about work, who actually isn't. And then like the mob bosses who you think are super evil and scary mob bosses, but they aren't. There's a lot of that goes on here. But
that's also because the Black Lodge, working with Cooper's Dougie, creates scenarios that make them more affectionate towards Dougie.
Yes, everybody loves Dougie. Can't resist him. But yes, during the meeting, Sinclair is like presenting a report about, because they're an insurance company. Right. So he's like, there's no arson with Littlefield. And as he says it, we see like this lime green light reflection flash on his face that supposedly nobody else but Dougie sees. And Dougie says, he's lying.
But it's not like a Black Lodge thing that he saw like in Vegas. It seems like just the reflection off Dougie's jacket from somewhere in the office, but Cooper takes that immediately as a sign.
Yes. And they're like, what the heck? Dude, you need to elaborate. But Dougie's just a stone wall. He doesn't have to elaborate. And Sinclair is pissed. He's like, what? Yeah. Like he gets really angry with Dougie in this meeting.
Now, if you go by my theory that Cooper is on this loop, then it makes sense why he would just say he's lying. Because it's almost like he knows that when he sees that, to say that, and that's going to get him to Mullins' office, which is going to give him the case files, and that's going to take him to the next step in this journey. Because he says it right away, and it's not like Dougie, where he's just like, he's lying. It's very much Cooper.
He's lying.
Right.
He says it so deeply. It's freaking funny to me. But yeah, you can tell his reaction is, Sinclair's reaction is honestly flabbergasted, because the old Dougie was in on this. He was working with Sinclair and on his side.
Yeah, because he says at the beginning, like, I was covering for you the last couple of days. And casting Tom Sizemore is a great choice because he has played some very heroic, also twisted characters. He played the cop in Natural Born Killers. That was just as vicious as the serial killers. He's had a troubled private life. So he's just perfectly cast as this character. You believe him as this character, you know? Anyway, so Cooper's Dougie gets pulled into Mullins' office. Mullins is ticked off.
Yeah, and you say pulled because that's literally, he's got a coworker on each arm directing him in there.
Yeah. And Mullins is like, here, take home this homework, gives him all these folders. He says, Sinclair's my best agent. He does more in a week than you do in a month. And that triggers Cooper to say agent.
Yes. Yeah. Why are you calling my best agent a liar? Agent. And he looks it down, Dougie does, and he like repeats it again. And it's like he remembers vaguely that word once meant something to him. You got that too in the performance.
It's like when you put a key into a car and you're trying to start it, it's trying to wake Cooper up. However, it's not Cooper's time yet to wake up, but it's planting the seeds.
Yeah, and the case files Mullins gives to him, he wants it by the next day. And he kind of insinuates, like, if you don't do this right, you're getting fired. I don't know what your future's going to hold is kind of what he says along the lines. And I was like, ooh, it sounds like he's ready to fire him because, like it was established earlier in the scene, he was completely MIA the last 2 work days.
So we have agent, we have case, we have files, we have the lawman outside. You know, everything's kind of coming together. And I think this is where people started to get a little antsy because they kept thinking, oh, Cooper's going to wake up any minute
For
now.
sure.
And we're only in part 5 and he doesn't wake up until part 16.
You gotta let it go, sweet baby. That's what I tell everybody before they go see season 3. I'm like, you just need to let Cooper go and enjoy the ride. Yeah, another detail I love about this scene, which I'm sure you noticed, is behind Molis's office desk. He has this giant framed picture of himself back from his younger years as, I guess, a boxing champion. And it says, Battling Bud Mullins.
Now, later on in this series, Sarah Palmer will be watching a boxing match. The first time I thought, oh, is she watching Bushnell Mullins as a young man boxing? But we will get to that. Bushnell Mullins is basically saying, like, your future depends on what you figure out about these case files. To hard cutting to Cooper's Dougie in the hallway, clutching his crotch, needing to pee.
Yep, he looks like a 2-year-old that knows he's not supposed to pee in his pants. And he's like bent over, like in anguish from his bladder. This whole scene is freaking gold. Yeah, Rhonda, the girl from earlier who was getting hit on and didn't like it. She's like, "Oh my God, is the men's room locked? Let me take you to the women's." You know, and you're like, oh, for a second I was like, oh, she's being really sweet and helpful. But then the second she gets in the women's room door, she tries to make some moves on him. And it's clear that maybe Dougie in the past had hit on her.
Dougie is the product, the tulpa of Mr. C, not the tulpa of Cooper. So Mr. C is obviously evil incarnate. And so there would be just negative energy poured into that tulpa. Because later on, when Cooper makes the tulpa for Janie E and Sonny Jim towards the end, it's a product of the good Cooper, so they're going to be okay.
Yeah. My favorite part about this scene, though, is, you know, after he doesn't really want to kiss her because he's just holding his bladder, she's like, all right, you can go. She closes the door and, like, stands behind it and listens to him. She listens to him while he's, like, moaning in relief from being able to finally pee. And she just kind of, like, giggles to herself and bites her lip. She just thinks it's so hot.
Now,
like, that is some good stuff right there.
Yeah, so much so that I'm kind of disappointed that Rhonda never really comes back in a significant way in this series.
Yeah.
We should be thankful because Lynch could have easily had other sounds from Dougie in the stall. Could re-edit.
Some tasteful potty humor is what you're saying.
All right, so we go from that back to the Silver Mustang, and the manager there is scared to death because the Mitchum brothers coming to pay him a visit.
Yeah, and we finally learned in this part that the supervisor's name is Burns. I've just been calling him the supervisor, but they actually say his name in this part. And they're standing in the security room, and you see so many screens. Like, they have multiple surveillance cameras for every single room in this casino. And it kind of struck me like, dang.
A few hours north of me, there was a casino, and somebody stole a lady's purse where she was sitting. And she went to the managers and said, somebody stole my purse. And they went to the cameras and they followed the guy from stealing her purse to the parking garage, was able to zoom in on his license plate. And within 10 minutes, the cops had pulled him over on the freeway.
Wow.
Casinos have, I don't think there's anywhere safer but the inside of a casino.
You might be right. Yeah, it's interesting too, because if you haven't seen this and you don't know it's the Mitchum brothers, Burns is informed. He says, they are coming up. And you're like, ooh, who is they? And they're going over the footage of Dougie winning 30 jackpots in a row.
And so the Mitchum brothers come in, they beat him senseless. They tell him that he's leave town, and then they tell David Dastmalchian, the other actor standing there, "Hey, you now have his job."
Yeah, and along with Rodney and Bradley Mitchum, we get to see Candy, Mandy, and Sandy, the three beautiful bimbos that follow them everywhere. And I like these girls. I do. I love how Burns is just getting punched and beaten to a pulp, and they're just standing in the corner looking bored.
Obviously, when you're watching this, it all flows together and it works. However, if you look at this editorially,
Okay.
you will notice that when the Mitchum brothers are talking to Burns, the girls are not there. They're only in these cutaway shots of them against the wall. Mm-hmm. Now, there is a part later, I believe it's part 10, where you see the girls against the wall again, and then they leave the room. Amy Shields' character opens the door, they all walk out, and they leave. Well, the shot of her opening the door is the one they use in this part where they played it backwards, so she closes the door. Oh. So they took these shots from, I believe it's part 10, and repurposed them earlier in part 5. I'm going to assume they realized that the girls were going to be introduced much later in the series than they wanted. So they used other footage to bring them up further into the story, but they weren't supposed to be in the scene at all.
Oh, that is awesome, because now that you mention it, they are totally separate from everything that's going on. But when you're watching it, you kind of think that's the point.
It is the point.
They point to Dougie and they say, "You let us know if this man ever comes in here again." That's a threat. So, I mean, Cooper is just inadvertently making all these enemies.
But also all these friends, too.
Yeah.
It's like even the enemies of Dougie are going to be won over by him.
Yeah. Dougie's the epitome of kill him with kindness.
I think that also is part of Agent Cooper as well, because Agent Cooper was this FBI agent who comes into the small town and he instantly won everybody over. You know, maybe not Leo Johnson, but like the whole sheriff's department just became his little buddies, like right away. There was no tension between him and Hawk, or, you know, there was never a moment where Cooper and Truman are at vicious odds with each other. They just became like this perfect group. It's not just the character of Dougie. Like if the Mitchums had met the Tulpa Dougie, they would have killed him.
Yeah.
It's Cooper as Dougie that wins everybody over, because he is so pure of heart and good natured.
And suave. I mean, all the ladies liked Cooper in Twin Peaks.
We go back to Rancho Rosa, and the little boy that's in the house with the 119 woman goes to examine the Tulpa Dougie's car.
Yes. And his mother, who's an addict, is just completely passed out. So he is free to roam however he wants to, and she wouldn't notice because she's asleep. But I like how whenever he goes outside to go across the street, he knows better. Like, he knows to look both ways before he crosses the road.
You said that you feel like they're squatters. Mm-hmm. And I just assumed, you know, this is a neighborhood that has hit hard times. And I thought that this mom had just kind of, you know, wasted away on the drugs, and the kid is just like kind of sitting there. But there's really nothing in this house but a couch and a table for her to do her drugs and fall asleep. So yeah, they are completely just hiding out in this neighborhood. Wow, what a sad existence for this little boy who seems, I mean, we don't know a lot about him, but he seems like a nice young kid. And he just has to sit there all day long and watch his mom waste away. And that's when the car thieves come back.
But you have a moment, right, where you're remembering the bomb and you're seeing this baby touching the bomb and you're like, oh my God, am I about to see this child explode? Like, I always have that terror, even though now I know that there isn't. It like gets me every second I see, not every second. It gets me every time I see it.
And that one guy starts throwing rocks at the kid.
Yeah, they're like, fuck off. And like, they're just being so mean.
But then the kid backs away about 10 feet, and they have no problem with him just like watching them. In the background, there's like a African-American family in their yard watching this too.
They're watching from the porch.
Right. So the car
That is so true, though. Like, anytime something goes down in a neighborhood, the neighbors, people are nosy. They come out to see what's happening.
Yeah, but no one goes to help.
Of course not.
Then the car explodes.
They're immediately incinerated. Those 3 guys that were jacking the car, like, instantly, they're gone.
And if you are a careful viewer, you'll notice that the hubcaps are different after the car explodes, indicating obviously they brought in a stunt car to to blow up, as opposed to.
I don't even know what a hubcap is.
It always made me wonder. It's like, why did you bring in a stunt car to explode it? Why didn't you just use the stunt car as Dougie's car?
Yeah.
3 of them get incinerated, and the other guys just take off.
There's no moment of like, no. Nope, they're out of there. And the boy runs home. And I thought it was interesting that the mom doesn't wake up until she hears the boy like slam the front door. And it wasn't the explosion that woke her up.
Lynch places this very ominous music over the scene. And it's really interesting because, this whole scene is played very quietly. There's no music until this moment. And I wanted to get your thoughts, like what you think this means, because it's not just played on the kid's face, like saying like, oh, this is a, momentous moment for him that he's always going to remember. It's played on the mom at first before it cuts back to the kid. And it's almost feels like this is a very ominous way of closing out this story.
So creepy. Like you said, it goes to her like just waking up and kind of being like, where the heck am I? And then it goes to the kid watching through the window, the flames. And then it goes back to her. And this music is like kind of like droning on. And she's got drool coming out of her mouth. And she's staring at what I imagine is the front door, because that's the direction the kid ran from. And there's always this moment where I'm like, oh, are they going to like cut to the front door? Like it's like I imagine this monster standing in the doorway or something, the way that the music sounds and she's staring at it. I don't know what it means, but it's scary.
It definitely hints at terrible things are coming. And
bizarrely, it bleeds into the next scene, which is kind of a funny scene. And I always
with
think
Jade?
With Jade. That scene with Jade starts off with this creepy music.
We are reintroduced to Jade. She's at a car wash. The guy working there says, hey, found this key. And it's from the Great Northern Hotel. And on the back, it says, clean place, reasonably priced, which is bizarre because that was Cooper's line in the pilot.
That is really interesting. I don't know. I also think it's interesting because, like, the Great Northern Hotel is fancy. Seems like at least a 4-star hotel.
So why they're using plastic keys?
No, why is it reasonably priced? It does not seem like that.
The sheriff says that, he can use his clout to get Cooper a decent room at the Great Northern. Yeah, the fact that the back of the key says that, I know it's supposed to be like this joke.
No, that's totally it. Now that you say it, it's just an inside joke for the fans.
Or maybe Cooper, that was his key. And for shits and giggles in the Black Lodge, because he was there for 25 years, chiseled that because apparently it was in his pant pocket the whole time. If Laura Palmer can get her hair permed in the Black Lodge,
yeah, get a whole makeover.
Agent Cooper can, chisel some words on the back of his hotel key.
So the key actually, it has the address. Like, if you find this key, mail it to this. She just drops it. Jade, she's like, oh, Dougie. And she just drops it right in the mailbox.
I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, yeah, you can just take something and drop it in the mailbox.
No, you don't even need a stamp.
Now we move back to Twin Peaks. We go to the Double R Diner, and Becky, who apparently brings the bread every day for the diner, shows up and is hounding her mom for more money. Norma, who is perpetually doing bills at this table.
It's hard being a business owner.
Yeah, but she is sitting at this table for a good chunk of her scenes in this series.
Oh yeah.
And she's noticing that Becky is Mom, I know, but can I borrow money? And Norma
He's looking for a job, Mom. He's really trying.
And Norma says later, this is the third time in 2 weeks that she's done this. Shelley pulls out some of her tip money.
It's like $70. She says, this is all I got.
I don't know what your relationship is with the actress Amanda Seyfried, but I love her.
I love her too.
I've been a big fan of hers for many, many years. And so when I found out she was cast in this, I thought it was great. I remember when this part aired, immediately the TV critics and people online were saying, oh, she's going to be this season's Laura Palmer. And I remember thinking to myself going, no, Laura Palmer is Laura Palmer. And I mean, Laura is the one. And Becky is not going to become the new Laura Palmer. And they're saying, well, it's because she's young and she's hooked on drugs. And she's got this bad boyfriend.
If anything, she is, and it's established in the scene because, Norma walks up to Shelley and she's like, you just can't keep enabling her. We both know that tune, don't we? And Shelley and Norma hug and they have this moment. And it makes me want to cry because they have been there. And that was my sentence that I think I cut myself off from is... Becky is Shelley and Becky is Norma because she's the new person in Twin Peaks who has an abusive partner who's kind of controlling her and she knows he's bad for her, but she can't resist. And it's a moment that takes me back to the original Twin Peaks. And I think it's really true to life. These relationship dynamics of the cycle of abuse repeating with your children. If you see your mom going through this toxic relationship, it makes sense that you would too later on.
Let's go back to a dialogue exchange in Fire Walk With Me where Cooper is talking to Albert and he says, she's in high school, she's on drugs, she's calling out for help. And Albert says, Cooper, you're talking about half of the high school girls in America. Becky isn't Laura Palmer. Becky is just another quote unquote woman in trouble.
and she's a young adult.
Right.
She's not in high school.
No, but I get the feeling that she and Steven were high school sweethearts that married far too young. Now they're living in the trailer park.
Yeah, I just love it. I love how these two women, Norma and Shelley, know better than anyone else how addicting and hard it is to break off a toxic relationship. And even still, you just have the two dynamics of when you love somebody who's in this situation. You're either like a Shelley who just wants the best and you're doing everything you can to help them, or you have like the Norma who's like, no, I'm not going to give you money. I'm not going to enable this behavior because I think it's wrong.
So Steven, who's waiting in the parking lot, realizes that Shelley and Norma are watching them. He then backs the car out of the side area of the diner to the back of the diner.
By the dumpsters. Real romantic place to make out.
This scene to me is really true to life.
It freaking pisses me off. Becky just begged her mom for money. Like, that's humiliating. Even if it's your mom and you're comfortable, like, that is humiliating to have to ask people for money, I think, no matter what your place is in life. It's just not a good feeling. She comes back, she's like clearly upset, and he's like, I'll buy you dinner. Okay, you're going to take the $70 my mom just gave me to buy us dinner. It's very ironic that they're so broke, yet he drives this like white sports car with red leather seats and a Phoenix decal on the hood. Dude, if you're in hard times, sell your car.
I get the feeling like the drugs consume his life rather fast and they're now spiraling out of control. And I think the show is kind of getting into like class warfare here a little bit too. Steven starts telling her, oh, you're beautiful and I love this about you. And she's just kind of like, okay. She doesn't really respond until he starts talking about her chest and her butt. And then like, she starts, yeah, then it's like, ooh, we're getting kinky here. And he gives her a little bit of drugs and then he takes the rest of it. And in this really dark, twisted moment becomes a scene of just like ecstasy and a scene that in many ways is this season of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, this is the most iconic shot out of this season of Twin Peaks. I see this with Amanda Seyfried, the driving scene is what I'm talking about. I see that clipped online everywhere. I'm pretty sure they played it maybe in the trailer for The Return. There's a clip of that in there. But yeah, it's just this gorgeous close up of Amanda Seyfried with her big blue eyes, like completely feeling the euphoria from that bump she just took. And she's like candy coated, false bliss, getting on by sweet nothing promises and a high that never lasts long enough. And this song plays. It's called I Love How You Love Me. But
Right.
it's like a very sweet love song.
Right. It's a classic David Lynch 50s song played over a young woman on a drug high. And the shot begins not centered on her. And then he hits the gas and the camera shifts perfectly with the music and the way Amanda Seyfried looks. It's just one of those moments where you feel like Lynch is just basking in this moment of just like, isn't this wonderful that we can just kind of free flow through this wonderful daydream? But again, what's going on under the surface is this young woman just took money from her mom, is with her drug addicted boyfriend, and she's on a drug high.
Before she like took the drugs, she wasn't happy with him. She was like, did you take all of that today while I was gone? Like, she's not pleased. But the second that enters her system, it's like all her problems are delayed until further notice.
Kick the can to another day. And
Procrastinating.
then we go back to Lucky 7 Insurance, and Dougie is standing backwards in the elevator, which again is another great comic moment.
And did you notice how many people are in this elevator?
Yeah.
That definitely is not safe.
You know, later on in this season, we'll see Cooper walking through the red room, and he waves his hand like this and can flutter the curtains. Well, him being backwards, it's a really funny like moment, but it also is suggesting that the backwards aspect of the lodge is still with this character. And
Ooh, I didn't think of that.
and he's just got the biggest smile on his face because everything is going to plan. But when the doors open and everyone starts yelling at him, Dougie,
Get
Dougie,
out of the way, go! They're ready to go home, and he is like the one thing standing in their way.
he, instead of going home, because he can't go home, he doesn't have a car, and he has no way of calling Janie E. He goes back to the statue. And
It's a safe place.
Yes.
Yeah, the sun sets around him, and the statue never ceases to amaze him.
All right, so then we go back to the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, and Hawk and Andy are there at the table, and Andy is perplexed.
It's the same thing like you were talking about. Norma is always doing files. Like Andy and Hawk are always looking for this case file. It takes forever.
Yeah, and Andy's just like, I'm not seeing anything having to do with Indians.
Yeah, I don't see any Indians in this. Do you, Hawk? But I think this was like kind of interesting because we're ramping up towards the end of the episode, but we get this long, slow shot with no sound besides like turning papers. And it lingers there for a long time.
And then we juxtaposition from that to Dr. Jacoby.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Imp.
Yeah. He is running his YouTube show, apparently.
He's got this really cool setup where he's like transformed a part of his trailer to be his radio studio. And he's got all these like vintage work lamps. He's got a vintage microphone. He's got a camcorder recording him that is somehow live streaming online his show. I don't know how he got that to work that way.
Yeah, and I mean, he's selling these gold shovels, but I don't think he's making a lot of money because he's still living in this trailer. I mean,
I think he just likes that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, perhaps.
He's rustic.
One thing that people may not remember is that he cannot be a psychiatrist anymore because obviously when it all came out about Laura Palmer and him having an affair with his high school patient, probably lost his license.
Absolutely. The politics of him is so interesting. He has this whole pre-written script laid out like sheet music in front of him. He's reading for it. We're doing the vamp for liberty, climbing the ramp for justice, and lighting the lamp of freedom. But he's very like anti-corporate. He's deep into conspiracy theories about toxic waste and germs infecting our bodies, and he's very displeased with the cops.
I do like his flashlight with the bat wings.
Yeah. And his little miniature Statue of Liberty he lights up. That is so cool. And my favorite part.
Yeah, your favorite part is the commercial?
Oh, no, actually. I do love that, but my favorite part is Jerry Horn on his iPad in the woods, smoking a joint, watching the show. And he's like, I know what I'll be cooking up. Another fan of the show is Nadine Hurley.
Yes, and that will play a part later in this season.
Yeah, and it's so good to see her. It is. She's got her eye patch still, the same eye patch.
So we get the commercial of him with the gold shovel, which is like...
We see the entire commercial.
It's very late night infomercial types of...
Absolutely. And that is the purpose of his gold shovels that we watched him so painstakingly make and design all these like contraptions to spray paint them. It's shovels to dig yourself out of the shit and into the truth. I want one. Maybe I should just make my own. That could be a fun video, making my own.
If you go to the town of North Bend, Washington, which where Tweeds is, the Double R Diner, across the street is the building where they shot Nadine's store for season 3. It's now like a bar, but in the front window is a gold shovel.
Oh, I love that. I have a whole video, not to do some promo, but I have a whole video on my YouTube channel where I put together every single David Lynch commercial. And I think you guys should check it out if you like David Lynch, because they don't feel like you're watching commercials. They feel like you're watching short films, because he's a brilliant director. And I like to imagine this entire commercial was done by David Lynch, because it's so good. It reminds me of some of his commercials I've seen, and this like angelic music plays over top of him talking about shit digging shovels.
We then go to Virginia at the Pentagon, and we are introduced to new characters, Lieutenant Knox and her superior, played by none other than Ghostbuster Ernie Hudson. She lets him know that they got another hit on Major Briggs, and this is the 16th hit in 20-something years. So her boss says, you are going to South Dakota.
Which I thought was really interesting, because the colonel, like, he's like, oh, it's probably nothing. Like, they get a lot of these random print matches, I guess, pop up from Major Briggs. And so he just seems very doubtful that it'll lead him anywhere. He's like, we could tell people about this, but we're just not going to, because it's not a big deal. So I'm like, then why are you sending her there? The
implication is that Briggs has been a real major player behind the scenes. If they're getting this many hits, it's because he was running through space and time, doing this, doing that. And unfortunately, I caught up to him with the Doppelganger, and he lost his head. Okay, people assumed when we saw the Roadhouse, oh, it must be the end of the episode. But it's not. We see David Lynch's son, Riley's band, up there playing. They're called Trouble.
That's his kid?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Which one is he?
He's the lead guitarist in the front.
Oh my God. I need to go watch that.
In this scene, we are introduced to a character we do not know yet is Richard Horn, Audrey's son, but he's sitting there in a booth smoking.
It's literally smoking in front of a no smoking sign.
And the manager of the Roadhouse comes over to him, tells him to quit. Deputy Chad shows up and says, I'll take care of this. And Richard Horn pays him off, suggesting that obviously Deputy Chad isn't just a jerk at his job, but is also doing nefarious things in his off-duty hours.
Yeah, it's a fun little cool way that they do it too, where they are like, oh, can I have a cigarette? You can have the whole box. And the cash is secretly in the cigarette box. He's not playing him off to like let him smoke in the bar. There's something else going on we don't know about yet. Yeah, and with this like electric guitar music played by these 50s greasers, and it's good music. It reminds me so much of like, dang, the Roadhouse is becoming more and more like Party Town in Firewalk with Me. It's just got more edge. And I could totally see Laura Palmer getting down here.
If you think about it, the Roadhouse, it doubles as the Miss Twin Peaks pageant. It doubles as a courthouse.
Yeah.
It doubles as a great venue for music. It also doubles as like one of the biggest crime scenes in history. There's always criminal activity happening in this place.
And also, like we saw in Firewalk with Me, this is where people go to meet up with their prostitutes from high school.
So it makes you think, why doesn't the sheriff's department just have a stakeout on this place like every night? Throughout the scene, we've noticed that there are 4 young women sitting in a booth next to Richard Horton. One of them gets the gall to turn around and be like, hey, you know.
Yeah, because they're all kind of like, ooh, like they're all looking back at him and giving him the flirty eyes. But this one, she's confident, but she's not a confident. She's very like shy when she actually approaches him, but she's the only one to approach him.
And he doesn't even try to seduce her with words. He just immediately sexually assaults this woman in front of her friends. It takes like 10 seconds before one of them says, hey, leave her alone. What are you doing? Her other friends, nobody comes to help. I would like to think, though, that if somebody did that her 3 friends would jump up immediately.
It takes them way too long to be like, let her go, dude. And of course he doesn't, because he's a psychopath. He's like holding her in his lap and he's got like his hands around the front of her throat, like borderline choking her out. And he threatens to R-word her. And it's like so jarring, because before he seems like this dominant bad boy type. He's like smoking the cigarette all seductively. And then the second a girl actually approaches him, it's awful, because he knows exactly why she's walking over there. He's like, you want to have sex with me. But he uses that as, I don't know, against her?
He is the offspring of the doppelganger. He comes from the sperm of evil. Even Leo Johnson apparently was nice to Shelley for a while before he turned into an abusive a-hole, right? This guy has no social skills whatsoever. It's the want that the doppelganger talks about in part 2. You know, I don't need anything, I want.
Yeah.
This guy is the personification of those impulses. Only one of them says, let her go. The other 2 just kind of sit there like, la, 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 la.
Well, they're scared for her. They all are, but not enough.
I don't know. To me, I feel like in this day and age, young women would get up and literally beat the crap out of him. And wouldn't just sit there and let him.
Or at least, call for help. Scream.
Because he's, like Dougie says, call for help. I don't even know if this girl would be friends with them after this whole ordeal.
All of that makes it 10 times crazier. And we don't know who this man is. We've never seen him in the show. They don't tell us who he is. The scene ends just like that. And we don't know what happens for the rest of the episode.
Or ever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because this young woman, Charlotte, never comes back.
Mm-hmm.
We go to Tammy Preston, Kristen Bell's character, and she is looking at a picture of Cooper that is taken from the episode in Twin Peaks when he's addressing Roger, the FBI agent, in the Mountie in the sheriff's conference room. And she's comparing it to the doppelganger's mugshot. And she's realizing that the fingerprints of the doppelganger are backwards from Cooper's fingerprints.
Yep. She's a studious one. It's a short, brief scene, but it's fun because the way that she acts, you see her like working it out on her face. So
then we get to the prison, and the doppelganger is finally going to get his private phone call. Warden Murphy brings the phone.
Thank you, Warden Murphy. He says like an animatronic. He was just clever because he likes to himself tap phone calls. He's like, okay, I know they're tapping this phone call. Warden
Murphy goes into the observation room. The doppelganger makes a phone call with a lot of numbers and basically just shuts down the whole prison electronically so that he could give a message without anybody hearing it. Oh, it's so good because Warden Murphy leaves the cell. Evil Cooper stares directly at the security footage and he says, now that everyone's here, I'll make my phone call. Should I call Mr. Strawberry? No. I know who to call. And then he like rapidly dials up. It's almost like he's like coding the way he quickly types this up. And the message he delivers while everybody's busy freaking out. What's going on? How's he doing this? The cow jumps over the moon. him dropping the name Mr. Strawberry, which makes me think of Mr. Reindeer from Wild at Heart. This has an effect on Warden Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like a lot of season 3, it implies things without overstating things, but it definitely suggests that the doppelganger knows something about Warden Murphy's history to use that against him. And I think the doppelganger knew this in advance because before he crashed his car and ended up in the prison, he was always planning to bust Ray out of the prison. So I think he was coming prepared for Warden Murphy.
Uh-huh. I love that. Yeah, and they don't tell you why he knows it's Mr. Strawberry. I almost get... I don't know. It makes me kind of think back to like Leland Palmer whenever he would like go out with Teresa Banks and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm like, oh, is Mr. Strawberry like his name he gives prostitutes? Maybe. That was what I got. But I get that out of nowhere. That's just my first thing that pops in my head.
I always took it as Warren Murphy had somebody killed named Mr. Strawberry. Maybe to get his job, maybe to get rid of a ex from his wife or something like that. But whatever it is, it's something that obviously Warren Murphy
visibly
it's something that Warren Murphy does not want getting out.
Yep. Yeah, and this scene always gets my heart racing. It's so good. And when he's done with his phone call, he hangs up and goes right back to staring at that security camera directly. And they're like, What did he just do? We cut to a city. The screen reads Buenos Aires, where the device in the wooden bowl contacted before by Lorraine rings and flashes twice with its 2 red lights, and then it shrinks down magically to the size of a pebble, which is crazy. And I love that. I freaking love that episodic mystery reveal, because at the beginning, we see this mysterious place. We have no idea what it is or what this little beeper thing is. Then by the end of the episode, it reveals the location, and that ties everything back to Philip Jeffries and that crazy scene in Firewalk with Me. And also, we now have some idea of what that red light signals. It's a part of Bob's great plan.
Nobody else could frame a shot like that but David Lynch. I mean, it's just a light bulb, and yet it has such perfection in the composition. And
yeah, especially because it's got some dust on it, maybe a spider web. So good.
So then we go back to Cooper's Dougie at the statue. Melancholy music's there. The security guard walks up to him, tells him, you need to move along. And then the credits roll, and you're just left with this feeling of horror and also a feeling of sadness, a feeling of ecstasy with Becky. You kind of get it all in this part. You know, it's amazing how much you can cram into 1 hour. It's just as jam-packed as the previous 4. When you are thinking about everything that happens in this part, it just has sort of a confidence about itself going, okay, now you guys know the setup. Mm-hmm. Now Cooper is being referred to as Dougie. We're going to introduce a whole bunch of new characters, and let's go on this ride.
So this episode manages to successfully juggle multiple branching plot lines, like the office politics at Dougie's workplace, the mob boss partners who run the Silver Mustang Casino, and more. We get the introductions of many new characters like Becky and Sleazy Steven, who seem to be Twin Peaks' latest toxic couple. And we check in with how all the crime fighters, except for the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, are getting closer to uncovering the truth, with Preston examining the fingerprints and Buckhorn discovering Dougie's wedding band inside John Doe's body. The most frustrating plotline for me in this episode was the Pentagon withholding the information that Agent Briggs' fingerprints had been scanned in Buckhorn. That's a huge revelation for the audience, because if they put 2 and 2 together, they'll finally realize the headless John Doe in Buckhorn is Garland Briggs. But the Buckhorn department doesn't get to know that because his prints are classified, which pisses me off. But still, it's fascinating that Briggs' fingerprints are popping up in other random places. What does that mean? Another revelation we get in this part is the identity of the goon who planted a bomb on Ducky's car back in part 3. The whole time, we've been wondering if they were debt collectors after Dougie or if they were hired by Mr. C to kill the real Cooper so he could remain on the Earth indefinitely. Well, if you consider the beginning of this episode, where the goons checked on Dougie's untouched car and Lorraine made a call to the beeping device we now know is in Buenos Aires, it becomes clear that they're working for Mr. C. And the biggest questions at the end of the episode: how did Briggs end up the way he did, and why was Dougie's ring inside his body? Who is the psychopath at the Roadhouse, and what happens to his victim, Charlotte? Well, we'll never know about Charlotte.
No.
What does the coded message Mr. C deliver over the phone really mean? And will Cooper/Dougie make it back safely to the Jones house?
It's amazing how jam-packed this part is. It's not loosey-goosey at all. There's a lot going on.
I know. Halfway through the episode, like, I had to take a pause and, like, step away from it because I was like, oh my God, this is so much to wrap my head around.
This truly is a masterpiece. Even if I have a few nitpicks, they couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of taking this thing down. It's a wonderful thing that David and Mark created. They changed the face of television with seasons 1 and 2, in my opinion, and they did it again with this incarnation of Twin Peaks. And then Frost did it with the books. Every incarnation of Twin Peaks raises the bar. Like, there's nothing in this world of Twin Peaks that's just like, oh, we took 2 steps forward, now we take 3 steps back. We're always jumping further and further and further.
Well, maybe not the Civil War reenactment scenes.
Well, this was fantastic. Thank you for joining me to discuss this part 5, Case Files of Twin Peaks 2017. This is just another incredible part, and we are inching closer to some of the more monumental parts of this season. So I look forward to discussing those with you.
That's what I'm waiting for.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Make sure to give this video and podcast a big thumbs up or 5 stars. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we will see you soon. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.